Good morning to you, Deesha. I was just watching MLB Tonight last night, and the conversation was about interest and years for Jacob deGrom. What's he looking for right now?
Yeah, deGrom is definitely looking for a multi-year deal. Whether that's going to be the Mets that give it to him is the interesting question here. The Mets know his history more than any other team, obviously. deGrom is a homegrown ace. He has expressed wanting to stay in Queens to remain a Met for the rest of his career. So I think deGrom is right now looking for, of course, that deal that will get him there. He's already on the older side for starting pitchers, so it's going to be interesting exactly who chalks up the money. The Mets know that he's had some injury problems, some health problems, so they might be looking for more of a shorter-term deal, whether that's 2 years with an opt-out after the first year. And there are other teams that are going to sort of ignore that injury history and go for the big splash that with an ace that could potentially lead their starting rotation.
And Billy Epler had conversations with him, and I guess the premise was, we'll keep in touch. I certainly wonder what that will mean. Time will tell. I'm always so curious, Deesha, about timing. How long can they wait for stars, right? And we've talked at length with different people on this show about how New York teams don't historically go after other teams' free agents, after each other's free agents. Is that the case with Aaron Judge, or is Steve Cohen just on his own rules?
Yeah, I think especially given Billy Epler and Brian Cashman's history there,
Yeah.
there's not really going to be a stepping on toes when it comes to another looming free agent. But when it comes to deGrom, I think they're mostly just focusing on not being blindsided by whatever deGrom decides to do, because as you mentioned, a lot of moves of what the Mets have to make rely on what deGrom decides to do. There's a lot of holes in their rotation, whether they want to bring back guys like Chris Bassett, Taijuan Walker, who are also free agents. They kind of have to decide how much money they want to spend on deGrom first to see if they're going to topple. They're already expected to topple that $300 million payroll and really exceed the limit here when it comes to luxury tax and all of it. So Steve Cohen has already showed that he's not afraid to go that distance when he wants to keep a star player on the team. And it helps, of course, that Steve Cohen is a huge Mets fan. So he'll kind of go to any length to make sure that his favorite players, his star players that produce for the team, remain in Queens.
Are you hearing anything about Judge and Queen's interest in him, of course?
Yeah, that's the one that I think can be the looming shark when it comes to Steve Cohen. I think he, of course, holds the financial might. If Steve Cohen suddenly wanted to express $400 million toward Judge and attract him to Queens, that's certainly possible and is just something that can't be ruled out at this point, especially if a star player like Brandon Nimmo, who is also in free agency, leaves, then that leaves a big hole in the outfield for the Mets. So I think there is an understanding point blank between Billy Epler and Brian Cashman that they're not going to sort of blindside each other and keep each other posted. But this is, of course, a business. And I think if it comes down to it, you can't rule out that Steve Cohen will sort of write that $400 million enticing blank check for Aaron Judge.
You mentioned Brandon Nimmo. What and where is his long-term future? What do you know?
Brandon Nimmo has always expressed, another homegrown Met, that he wants to remain in Queens, and this is more of a desirable outcome for him than it would be for someone like Jacob deGrom, who is just searching for that long-term deal and just wanting his money earned back to him after signing a team-friendly contract. This is different from Brandon Nimmo. He has expressed that he wants to also just stay a Met, and he loves his teammates, but of course, he's also a Boras client, and with Scott Boras and Steve Cohen, they recently engaged last offseason in a deal for Max Scherzer, so that went really well. Boras also expressed at the GM meeting how the Mets have declared themselves to be competitive, different from the old regime. And in that sense, the relationship between the Mets and Scott Boras is very important, and it's on very good terms. So there's a good chance of Brandon Nimmo is a top priority for Steve Cohen, Billy Epler, and the Mets to re-sign and remain in Queens. I think there's a good chance of that happening as of right now.
Mets acting early, and we'll see if it's often. Deesha with the very latest this morning on Hot Stove. Appreciate the time. As always, we're going to step aside.